Hey there, lovely people. Welcome to Be Your Best You with Tash and Becky, your go-to hangout for all things spiritual, subconscious, and downright magical. We're here to sprinkle a little mystical wisdom into your everyday life and help you level up your reality.
Picture this as your cosmic coffee date, where we chat about the unseen world, blend in some psychology vibes and stir up the subconscious magic. Get ready to be the queen of your own reality, live a life that lights you up and have a blast doing it.
So grab your latte or your tea and let's dive into another episode of Be Your Best You, where the mystical meets the mundane and your best life awaits.
Cheers to creating magic together.
Let's do this.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Be Your Best You with Tash
and Becky.
Today we have an episode that might seem on the surface of it maybe heavy.
Yeah.
It obviously, you know what it is. It's trauma because you've already read the episode title. So we're going to be talking about trauma today, but I think again, it's a really big subject, isn't it? So talking about trauma in terms of what it actually is, it might not be what you think it is. And in terms of how I work and what I do on a day-to-day basis, how important it is for every single person, whether you think you've got trauma or not, to realize that you have got trauma in a certain way. But what is trauma? And because there's a lot of ideas around what it is, isn't there? And we kind of just want to talk a bit deeper about that. Again, a bit like our victim mentality episode, just open the doors to seeing it in a new way.
Definitely, yeah.
And how it can be used to help you understand yourself in your personal growth journey, in your spiritual development journey, because again, like we will keep on saying, it's always about going back to your past and your past programming to understand who you are now and how you can change.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So, let's get chatting. So, trauma. Okay.
Yeah. It sounds such a big, heavy word, doesn't it? Trauma. And actually, I think a lot of us don't realise we're living with trauma because we push it to one side and we say, well, I'm okay. That wasn't trauma, you know.
And sometimes we don't even have that conversation with ourselves, that narrative.
True.
Because we truly don't believe that what we experienced was trauma.
Just life, you know.
And like, oh, well, I'm okay. It was fine.
So then you don't acknowledge it and you don't. And all the while, I guess your subconscious mind is programming you around that trauma.
And it's not just your mind. Again, we'll go back to this whole body, mind and soul thing. It's your body. Your body stores trauma. Your body holds trauma. Your body remembers trauma, whether you consciously know it or not. It's not all about being in the brain.
No.
So some people may have heard of big T and little t trauma.
Oh, no, I haven't.
So I'm not sure who came up with that. I don't know whether it's just something that everybody says or whether it was actually started by a psychologist or therapist or something. I'm not sure. But effectively, big T trauma is the things that we typically think of as trauma.
Yes.
So abuse, sexual, physical, you know, all of the as a child not being cared for in whatever way that might look like, not being nurtured, all of the horrible, plus then not just that, but not emotional trauma, but like physical trauma, car accidents, you know, anything like that, anything huge that most people would go, oh, that's traumatic. Big T trauma. Little T trauma. The small little everyday things that we typically don't associate with trauma, we don't acknowledge, we don't even know that that's traumatic. Nevertheless, they are still trauma and they will still have the same effects as the big ones.
That's right.
In lots of ways.
That's right.
And that's really the trauma we want to talk about today, isn't it? Because we all know the big T traumas. We all know what they are, and most people won't they won't go unnoticed to people. They might be pushed to the back and not dealt with, but they won't be unnoticed. People will know that that's what's happened to them. They just might not want to deal with them. It's the little t traumas that I'm quite interested to talk about today, because obviously that's what I work with. And I have to be honest, before I did this, we've had this conversation earlier before we started the podcast, didn't we? But before I did this work, I didn't recognise what little t traumas were.
No.
And I was certainly one of these, people that are like, just keep going, push it down, keep going. Just no, it's fine, I'm fine.
That's right.
I dealt with it. Keep going.
Yeah.
And what you don't realise is actually you're never letting them go. Like I said, they're in your body, they're being stored.
Yeah.
Your subconscious is still replaying them. You're stuck in a loop. And this is what causes all the problems in your life.
Yeah.
And it's like we said, it's a good example to probably say this, isn't it? Like what we were talking about earlier when you were saying how we had that conversation and we were talking about our childhoods.
Yeah.
And what was it that you said? Like about how, well, that's really traumatic to me.
To you?
Remember?
What
I can't
was the actual trauma?
I can't remember what it was.
You were saying something to me and playing it down.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, that's trauma. And that made you think, didn't it? You think, well, actually, what you considered trauma wasn't what I was considered. You can't compare one person's trauma either, can you, to another?
No, and this is the problem here. This is where we get into dodgy ground, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where some people might get upset by what we're saying.
Yeah.
But you, like you said, you can't compare each person's trauma.
Yeah.
Because someone could have had something, on paper, terrible happen to them.
Yeah.
And we all accept that it's terrible.
Yeah.
Then a big T trauma.
Yeah.
But then someone could have experienced a little T trauma that on paper is insignificant, wouldn't even be worth remembering, and yet their bodies were doing exactly the same thing in that time, reacting in that fight or flight state, and their bodies felt the same. So yes,
as if it were a big T.
Yes, any trauma is a trauma.
Yes,
and because a trauma is something that is making us go out of a state of balance, sending our nervous system into haywire to survival mode. And then all the consequences of that happening. And then it stores in your body, in your subconscious mind. You learn from that experience. You become wary of whatever was surrounding that experience. And that forms your reality and how you see the world as you move on. So maybe we should talk quickly about, seeing as we brought up the body. And it's very relevant with trauma. What happens with the nervous system when you experience a trauma.
Right.
So, what I should say as well, with these little T traumas, often, a lot of the time, they can be continuous. So with a big T trauma, they can also be continuous, but not necessarily. It could have just been a traumatic, awful event. But these little T traumas could be something that happens consistently over time. So, for example, a child who is not shown love in their childhood. Now, that doesn't mean that they're abused or have had terrible things happen to them. But if their parent is unavailable, let's just say emotionally unavailable, and they are not nurturing that child with love on a continuous basis, yes, that's a little T trauma. But can you see how that would be devastating and have devastating effects to that child, because it's constant, which means it's in a constant state of the nervous system being in fight or flight, in survival mode, and that has very many consequences. So if you just go back to what happens in the body, so you experience a trauma and or something happens to you and your body goes into fight or flight, right? So it's like survival mode, we've got to run away from this danger, we have to react to this danger in whatever way, and then that can be a fight response or a flight response or a freeze response where you just effectively play dead. Whatever it is, your nervous system is kicked out of whack. And what happens when your nervous system goes into that cycle is that you lose all your critical functions. So everything that you don't need to survive basically gets shut down. Like power gets pulled away from all your critical functions. So this higher logical thinking that we have, being able to be rational, all that just goes. Forming memory, the ability to form memories, that's not important when you're in survival mode. That goes. You know, this connection, that being able to love and have connection with people, don't need that when you're running away from danger. That gets gone. You know, everything goes towards helping you survive, which is your body gets flooded with cortisol, the stress hormone, adrenaline, preparing you to run away from something, to fight something. Your heartbeat starts racing faster. You know, all of the, what you would probably class as anxiety symptoms start coming into play there. And effectively, you're on high alert. You're on high alert all the time.
And we don't have any control over that, really, do we?
No, because it's our nervous system. It's a subconscious. It's a subconscious thing.
An individual, you know, can react differently.
Yeah,
you can't really control that at that moment.
No. So that is your body going into an automatic state of survival.
Yeah.
And now, and the thing is that what ideally would happen in an ideal world, we need our nervous system, we need this state of survival, don't we? Like, because when there really is danger, go back to caveman days when we really did need to run away from a lion or something that was you know, chasing us and going to eat us, that's very, very helpful. But once we've run away from the lion or the tiger, the body understands that, because they've stopped. It's very obvious, isn't it? The lion stopped chasing you. I can stand down. I'm safe. And the body goes, right, okay, all back to normality.
Right.
That's normal. That's what we want. And it's like the loop's closed. So you're at your starting point. You get a stimulus, which would kick you off into fight or flight. Your body reacts and like, well, okay, we're going to save you now. Does all what I said, pulls away from the critical functions, and then gets you to run away. So you use up all the chemicals, all the hormones are in your body, and then the danger's gone and you get back to balance. That's your loop you want to do. Where trauma is concerned, you have your stimulus, you get kicked into fight or flight, and then there's actually nothing to say it's all over with now. Do you know what I mean? So this is the thing with the little T trauma, where it's continuous and it keeps on happening. You're never getting to complete that cycle. So you always are living in a threatened state, waiting for that lion to stop chasing you, but you never get the relief from it. So you never get to complete this cycle. And that is what trauma is. That's the trauma. Like not completing that cycle, basically. Because if you had that something happen to you, the stimulus, gone into fight or flight, and then managed to close everything's okay now and close the loop, that wouldn't necessarily be lodged in your body as a trauma, because you've completed it. Does that make sense? You've completed that loop. Trauma is like an unfinished loop. And so what we do in the therapy that I do, that's like the whole part of it. We go back to these traumas and close the loop. By doing the healing work that we do, we revisit it, and then we give an end to it and say, that's it, you can stop now, you can close the loop, it's done, you get the understandings and you can let it go. But anyway, so that's effectively what happens when a trauma is created. So I suppose a good question is, for people listening, is why are we talking about trauma? What's the point? How is this relevant to moving forward, to self-development, etc., etc.? And I would say it's really, really closely linked with your limiting beliefs. Like in my experience, and again, this is just my experience. I'm not a trained psychologist. I have done a lot of reading around things, but purely speaking from my experience in my life and the work I've done, but also working with the clients that I work with in the way that I work with, trauma is very, very linked to your limiting beliefs. When we're revisiting the past, effectively, the whole point we are revisiting the past is because we are revisiting past traumas. And this is why I wanted to be quite clear in that in talking the type of trauma we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Like the smaller ones, the ones that you don't necessarily identify as traumas, because there could be so many people here listening that are just think, well, I don't have any trauma. This isn't relevant to me.
Yeah.
I had a lovely childhood.
Yeah.
My mum and dad were lovely. You know, I have no trauma.
Yeah.
And I said the same thing. I said the same thing until I started looking into my past with an objective view.
Yeah.
Because that's what you have to do. You have to look at it objectively. You can't look at it with the same eyes that you were in it with, because you won't see it. You're seeing it through the lens that you always saw it from.
Yeah.
But if you zoom out, bigger picture view, and have a look back, then you can start thinking, okay.
And do you think it could be quite useful to go to your limiting belief first, and then try and work out where that limiting belief could have come from?
I think both.
And
you could
go that way.
Yeah, I think you can do it both ways.
Because sometimes it's hard to identify the trauma, isn't it? If it is a little t, you know, if you worked backwards, you could figure out why you have that limiting belief.
Yeah.
If you're not sure where on earth it could have come from.
Yeah, and that's what I do with the ladies that I work with. We have already got an idea of what their limiting beliefs are, because I do certain things with them to discover them. And then we go back and revisit the past to find out where they came from. And it always goes back to a trauma. Yeah. But if I'd have asked them before they came in, have you had any traumas in your... They would say no. Yeah. For the most part. You know, some people know they've had not very nice things happen to them, but they're the easy things to deal with, because they're already in your conscious awareness. You know that you've got issues because of those traumas. Right. It is... And I think this is why the smaller traumas, the ones that we wouldn't necessarily identify as traumas, are the most important ones, because they're the ones out of our awareness. Yeah. And when something's out of your awareness, again, going back to the limiting belief conversation, you can't change anything if it's out of your awareness, can you? Exactly. You have to know what it is so that you can start changing it, reframing it, healing it, etc.
That's right.
So yes, that's the perfect way to figure out where your limiting beliefs came from. And it can be so, I mean, you know, let's give some examples, for instance, because I think that's another thing as well, isn't it? When I was kind of looking at my childhood, when I started first diving into all this kind of self-development work, looking at myself, you know, exploring, I really truly said, and you know, my sister and I would have conversations about it. Well, no, we've got no trauma. We've got no trauma. Our child is wonderful. Yeah, because it was. Yeah. We were very, very lucky. We had a lovely child. But when you start digging deeper and you listen to other people talking about their trauma, suddenly you know, we were like, oh, well, we had that. Oh, so that's a trauma. Oh, I did actually. Oh my God, now I think about it. Yeah. That actually is really traumatic. And then going back to what we said with our conversation, when I said something to you out of, you know, it was kind of just by the by, wasn't it? Yeah. You were like, well, hang on a minute, Tash. Yeah. That's really tough. Yeah. And it was by you saying that, it made me able to look at it more objectively. Yes. And step out of that whole like, well, no, I'm fine. I just got through it.
That's who you were, wasn't it? You programmed your whole life around these things, these little T's. That's all goes towards your programming, doesn't it? Yeah.
Because exactly, yes, it does, and you get used to that as being your normal as well. Like you don't know any difference, that's just how it is. Yeah. But you tell someone else that, and they say, "Well, I didn't have that happen. That's horrible. Like I wouldn't.
How did you with that?
Exactly?" And then it makes you realise.
Yeah. Like don't play down these things that have happened to you because they don't sound big enough or important enough.
So it's always, and I say this over and over again to the people that I talk to. It's always the small, insignificant memories that come up that have the biggest change in your, like, aha moments, and give you the biggest change and highlight why you've been living your life the way you've been living. Yeah. So I'll give you some examples that typically come up a lot with when I'm working with my ladies. School. Right. School has such a big part to play in how we end up as adults.
Yeah.
And every time I go back and I have these past regressions and we revisit these events, I'm like, it's bloody school again.
Yeah.
And it really makes me want to go in and go teach the teachers,
Yeah.
you know, and say to them, do you understand that if you say this, if you do this, if you act in this way, if you do this to this child, you are effectively causing them 20 years down the line to have no belief in themselves, to not be able to, stand up and talk to someone without feeling anxious.
Oh my goodness. It all comes back to childhood.
It does.
Doesn't it?
It's always back in childhood. And obviously school plays a massive part because we're at school for hours of our days when we're
vulnerable.
We're in hypnosis. Yes, exactly. And so school plays a big part, and there's a lot around school. It's not just the teachers. Teachers have a big part, but it's also children. Children are cruel. It's tough, isn't it? And even if children aren't cruel, you can still have traumas from something you would never have a trauma about. Even just putting your hand up in class to say an answer, and you get it wrong, and a kid goes, ha! I mean, come on, they're not even being cruel, are they? It's just children. That's what they do. They're learning. But that can be enough to break down, fan the flames of you having absolutely no belief in yourself.
That's right. And that's a little T. Yet another child, the same thing happens. They couldn't care less.
Exactly.
Goes right over their head.
Exactly.
So...
No, you can't compare any trauma. No. And like you said, one person could go through exactly the same thing and walk through unscathed. The other person could could have devastating effects. Yeah. And I say devastating, and I don't say that lightly.
No.
Truly can have devastating effects for the rest of their lives until they go back and address and understand why. Because again, we'll go back to, like I said, with limiting beliefs, they're like glasses, like lenses, you're putting on a lens. And this is how I see it when I go back and revisit these things with these people. Yeah. It's like the trauma occurs. So for example, the little girl puts her hand up and everybody laughs at her. And it's like all of a sudden I see, well, there goes a set of glasses going on. Yes. And from that moment on, she's seeing through the lens don't speak up, because when I speak up, I get laughed at. Don't speak up, I'm stupid. Like people laugh at me because I'm stupid. So I've got nothing to offer. Yeah. These are the types of limiting beliefs that are formed by experiencing these little T traumas. Yeah. Let me just try and think of another kind of trauma. There's a lot to do with friendships and birthday parties.
Really?
Yeah. So like, you want to invite your friends to your birthday party.
Yeah.
And then they don't want to come.
No.
And it's not necessarily because they didn't want to come, but maybe, one of them was going on holiday, the other one couldn't make it that day. One of them had another party to go to that they'd already said yes to.
Yeah.
However, that little girl in that moment thought, nobody wants to come.
Yes.
This is the lens she put on.
Yes.
Nobody wants to come to my party because they don't like me.
Yeah.
I'm not liked.
Yeah.
And then from there, that could stem a whole new load of beliefs of, well, I have to give to make people like me. Yeah. I'm not worthy of who I am. Right. I have to be someone else.
Yeah.
I have to do all of this to make people like me. And then that progresses as you put that frame, the lens on. And then you are looking for that in the rest of your life, and then your reality will mirror back to you that you are looking for in your lenses, and so you'll find more proof of that, which will solidify that belief and make it go deeper, and then you'll find some more, and it snowballs like that till in the end, the actual symptom that the adult is displaying has almost nothing to do with that. That's instigating event of she put her hand up and nobody wanted to come to her birthday party, because it goes crazy, it goes wild. But actually, when we do the regression and we revisit back to that trauma, you can see very clearly how that happened. But you would never, when someone first comes to me and says, I really struggle with believing in myself, I don't think that I'm good enough, I don't think that I'm worthy to have friends, and then stuff in their life maybe kind of is is manifested in that way. So they do struggle to have meaningful friendships. They do struggle to have that self-confidence in themselves. And so that's affecting them in their work, and it's affecting them in relationships. You know, there is not one point where they could sit there at the start and say, oh, but I know because it's because of
that day.
My birthday party. No one turned up when I was 5 years old. That's the magic of doing this subconscious work. It's the magic of, you know, being able to use hypnosis to get someone to a state where they can go back and access these memories. Because like I said before earlier, you know, when we're experiencing trauma and we go into that state of fight or flight and our critical functions are taken away, one of the things that we stop doing is creating memories.
Right.
So a lot of people, and if you're listening and you don't have an awful lot of memories of your childhood,
right,
chances are you were in the survival state for a lot of it.
Wow.
And it's a great way to realise, oh, actually, so I was experiencing some continuous trauma there, because you're not storing those conscious memories. But by the way, your subconscious mind is constantly recording, always on. Doesn't matter whether your conscious mind is banking those memories. And again, this is where I'm going into my, I want to say woo-woo kind of stuff, but, you know, the more spiritual aspect of what I do, because potentially, you know, again, some therapists or some psychologists might say, no, you're not, the memories aren't there, you're not storing them, so they're not there. I don't believe that. No. I believe the subconscious is so much bigger than we kind of would necessarily read in textbooks. There's a bigger consciousness, it's connected to more things, and that part of your subconscious is always recording. The memories are always there. And in fact, I've had it been proven to be true, because a lot of people come in here and say, I have no memories of, I'm thinking of one of my lovely ladies, and she had very, very little memories of her childhood. But since we've been doing the work together, she is unlocking and accessing so many memories that she had completely lost. And they're all here. And some of them are lovely, good memories. Some of them aren't great memories, but that's great because we're working with that and we're healing around that. And it's helping her grow into who she needs to be and release who she's been because of those memories. But look, if she hadn't unlocked those memories, she would never have been able to do this work. It's really difficult because you need that understanding of why you had those limiting beliefs. And it's because of that trauma. You need to live through that trauma and heal it and reframe it and recreate it so that we're finishing the loop.
That's right.
So actually it's like quite interesting. One of the things we do is, because I know some people, it doesn't sound very nice, does it? Like, come here, come and see me, and I'm going to take you back to your trauma and make you relive it. It doesn't sound that like fun. But honestly, and you can speak to any single one of my clients and they will all tell you it's the best thing you can do. And some of them come in and go, come on, let's do it. I know I've got to tackle this memory. And these are the ones that have got some big T traumas, that they're not nice, but they know that it's what needs to be done now, because the thing is, because with the traumas, whether you know you've got them or not, you're constantly hiding from them, running away from them, pushing them away, because we don't want to feel them. We don't want to feel. And I guarantee you, and everyone listening, I can say to you right now, there'll be memories that you have pop into your mind from certain times in your childhood, and it will come into your mind out of nowhere. You'll be washing up or driving or listening to a podcast or something, and you'll have a memory pop up, and it will be from at some point of your childhood, and you'll think, oh, that was weird, why did I think about that? Push it down, and then it'll come up again, you know, maybe in months time, whatever, but there'll be a few key memories, and I wonder if people will be thinking of these now. And if you are, come over into the Facebook community group.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And let us know.
Please.
Because we can chat about it, and we could, like, you know, dig into why that memory is coming up for you. But anyway, so if you have these memories pop up, those memories are coming up for a reason. They're coming up to the surface because they need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And they are your keys. They are the keys to your trauma.
Yeah.
They are therefore the keys to your limiting beliefs. They are therefore the keys to opening up your future.
Yeah.
To a new desired reality of your choosing, releasing you from where you are right now, which is they're probably keeping you feeling stuck, feeling like you're not reaching your full potential, feeling like you have got more to give, but you just can't change it. These things that you want to change, you know you need to change, but you just can't quite seem to change them.
Yeah.
These are the keys. This is what you need to address.
And I guess this is where, when we're younger and as we come into adulthood, this is a coping mechanism that works for so long until it doesn't. And eventually it's going to come out, isn't it?
That's the point.
Yeah.
That yes, they will always come to the surface.
Yeah.
And it won't be pretty.
No, and you don't know when.
No. And again, like we said, like I said, when they come in and they have these symptoms that are manifesting in their world, you would never relate it back to the birthday party.
That's right.
Much like that, like when it comes out, you still won't really know necessarily where it's come from until it's too late.
Yeah.
And then you'll realise, I always knew. And you'll say to yourself, I always knew I knew that was coming. Like you didn't know it was coming, but you did know it was coming.
Yeah.
And that's your intuition.
Yes.
That's your soul talking to you that was trying to get your attention, but you weren't listening. You weren't paying attention because it's too difficult. And it goes back to, what I was saying with these memories that pop up, that you kind of just think, I'm thinking about that again, and push it down. And sometimes it can be so subtle that you don't even have that thought. It's like it flashes past you, you see it, maybe experience it slightly, start feeling something, and then bam, it's gone.
Right.
Because subconsciously, consciously, both, whatever, you don't want to feel it, because there's not nice feelings attached to it.
That's right.
And your subconscious mind and your body knows this.
Yes.
And so we ignore them.
Distract.
Yeah, because we don't want to feel it. It doesn't feel nice to feel those feelings. But the problem is, like you said, if you don't feel them, then you can't address them, and they will still be there, held in your body, creating things in your reality, manifesting things in your body that aren't ideal to you. So the whole point then is that we want to feel them, which is what we do when we're working together in my programs. We go back and revisit the trauma, and yes, it doesn't sound very nice, but when you're in it, okay, you, especially using hypnosis, this is why I really like hypnosis, you can be in that memory. So it's like if I said to you now, just close your eyes, and take yourself back to some time in school that you didn't really like that much. Yeah. So you can see, you're there, you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so come back. Now, when you're in hypnosis, there is no difference. That's what we're doing, except when you're in hypnosis and you're in that calm, kind of more inner focused state, you go back there easily, more. You feel it more. Yeah. You feel like you're there. Yeah. Like, as we said before, I did the whole lemon thing with you, didn't I? Yeah. Where, that's right. You don't have to actually have a lemon in your mouth when you're holding that lemon, and you start imagining it, and then you bite into it. Your body reacts as if it's really real, because your subconscious mind doesn't know whether something's really happening or whether you're just creating it in your imagination. Yeah. And this is powerful. It's also scary. Yeah. We need to harness it in the right way. But it's within that, using that concept, that's why we do regression, because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between you actually being there and that happening in the moment, and you just remembering it. So the whole point is that we use hypnosis to get you to use your imagination, to take you back to that memory. And it becomes quite visceral. You really, instead of just remembering it and flashing it by, you feel it. You are in it. You are experiencing it again, which is everything you've been running away from and trying to avoid. Yeah. But it's everything you need to do. And actually, once you're in there, obviously you're with me, you're safe. I'm guiding you in a very loving, caring way. Yeah. But you're by feeling your emotions, we can then release them out of your body. So that's a really powerful thing that we do first. We release it out because you've been holding on to them for potentially decades. And by feeling them, like we said, an emotion takes about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to travel through your body. You've not, every time that memory's popped up and tried to say, hey, look at me, address me. No, it's thanks. Like seconds worth. A couple of seconds you might feel it for, and it's gone. Now here in this safe space, you're feeling it, and we turn it up so we can release it, and we get it out of your body. And literally just doing that, people go, because your body just your intention is so powerful, and it seems like, how can that possibly work? But it truly does. You are, with your intention, you are moving. Emotions are energy in motion. Everything is energy. Emotions are energy. You are an energy body, an energy field, and that wonky energy is being stored and vibrating wonkily in your body by your intention, by healing it, by feeling it. We get it gone and we release it. That's a big thing about releasing the trauma. But then what we also do, and let's go back to, we started this because of with this trauma loop. You've been in that continuous loop that doesn't get to finish. And so what actually that means is you're living through your life being triggered by something, and you get triggered into this loop. And this trauma loop will continue to be triggered and triggered. The problem is it's never getting finished. So everything in your life that's, again, not necessarily related to the birthday party and your friends not coming, but everything that in your life, like, you want to be kind of in as part of your group at work, and you always feel like the outsider, that people don't like you, triggering that loop. Now, you don't know it's doing that, but it's triggering it every time. So what we do then, after we've released the feelings, is we work through what that trauma was, and we come at it from an objective point of view, like I said before, where we can work out, okay, I see why that was traumatic for you at that point as a child, because that's how you viewed the world, and you didn't have the ability to see the bigger picture. But can you see how potentially that person couldn't have come because they were on holiday, or that person's mum couldn't have brought them. And then, and of course, as the adult, going back and doing that, you can say, oh yes, I can see that. I can understand that. And also I can see, wow, how crazy that all my feelings that I'm feeling now in my adult life have come from the fact that I made myself believe that I wasn't likable and I wasn't lovable because of that silly kind of episode, which wasn't silly to that 5-year-old. So it's having that compassion for that 5-year-old. It was the world, it was everything, and it was trauma. But from a bigger, objective point of view, it's that you're like, well, I can let that go. And that's what we do. We kind of come to that understanding. And because you're in hypnosis and you feel it and experience it, that is how you can switch it. Because I had this conversation the other day, actually. If I had said to, say you're the girl with the birthday party girl. If I had just said to you when you walked in, you're feeling that you can't make friends and that nobody likes you, and you're having lots of difficulties in relationship, people are bullying you, co-workers are bullying you, this is the type of thing, this is how it manifests, because you attract what you expect. So we're not saying that no, you're making it up and you're not really getting bullied, and people do really like you. Oh no, people can be being really cruel to you and bullying you, and you can be bullied. But it's because that's what you're attracting to yourself, because of your view of yourself, because you believe that about yourself. You will attract people and situations into your life that reflect that. But if you had walked into me and said, this is what's happening, and I said to you, well, the reason that you're getting bullied at work is because you had a birthday party at the age of 5, nobody turned up, and you believed that because of that you weren't lovable. Well, you're going to go, really? Like, I don't really see that.
No.
But when you experience that situation yourself, and you go back to that 5-year-old you at the birthday party, feeling those feelings, feeling the trauma of nobody likes me, I'm not lovable, and you feel it from that perspective, but also with the ability to be an adult, and that's when you go, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make sense when someone tells you, but when you experience it, that's wisdom.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Like, it's like you can read a book on how to drive a car.
Yeah.
You can read everything, but until you experience it, you're never really going to know how to drive a car.
No.
And that's the same thing with this trauma. So once you've experienced it, you get it. And then we change the trauma. Then we give that younger you the resources that they needed back then to understand you are lovable. Everybody loves you. They just couldn't come to your birthday party because of this.
Yeah.
All the other stuff. There's deeper stuff, obviously, that we'll go into. Give that to them. And then we recreate the memory.
Yeah.
We recreate the memory as it would have happened with the understandings that you've just given to your 5-year-old self. And then we complete the loop.
Yeah.
Everything's done. There's no trauma loop anymore. And we replay that memory. So guess what? Every time something happens in your life that would have triggered you before and would have triggered that trauma loop, you get you get triggered by it.
Yeah.
But it's a good feeling. It's empowering feelings because we change the memory to like, oh, everybody came to my party, or oh, it was fine because I understood people couldn't come and that was fine, and I still had a wonderful time with the people that were there.
Yeah.
The loop gets finished, it's full of good feelings, and you no longer believe that about yourself and attract that into your reality. And it gives you a step up to be able to say, oh, I actually am worthy. I understand why I didn't think I was, but I am.
Makes such sense, doesn't it?
And that is the importance of revisiting your traumas.
Yeah.
And understanding and being aware and open to acknowledge and accept that, in my opinion, no single one person can get through childhood without experiencing trauma of some kind.
Yeah, that's right. And what you wouldn't have considered trauma. So like if I'd walked in and that I was that little girl, I would be saying, well, that's not trauma. That's just what happens to children. And it would be you getting me to acknowledge what that did to my body and how that's affected me going forward.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that was trauma to me.
That's
you know,
it.
and someone else may not have felt it in that way.
No, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, like, and again, you can't. You could have had that trauma, and someone else could have had a very, very, on paper, awful childhood.
That's right.
You know, where they weren't loved, but it doesn't matter. It's awful for that child. You know, I'm not taking that away from the people who have experienced the awful trauma, but you cannot compare trauma.
No,
trauma is trauma.
It's an individual.
Yes, and that's how you felt it in your body.
Yeah,
you experienced
and you don't
it.
actually have control over your nervous system at that point when that's happening to you. So you can't put it into perspective. Like, well, this isn't trauma. This is just silly. Your body doesn't know any different, and your subconscious doesn't know any different.
Exactly. It doesn't.
How you're wired.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't care if it's been an awful big T trauma or a little T trauma. It makes no difference to it. All it knows is how it's reacting, and that it feels like its survival and its safety is threatened.
Yeah,
and it has to react in a way that saves you, basically, because that's what your subconscious is always trying to do.
Yeah,
always trying to keep you safe.
Yeah,
always trying to keep you to survive.
Yeah.
And these traumatic situations cause you to feel unsafe, cause you to feel in danger, but also cause you to believe certain things about yourself that aren't true.
Yeah.
And it is, again, so linked to your limiting beliefs. And I think that, so obviously, I mean, I know I've talked a lot about how I work with people to help them understand and find their trauma. Again, you can absolutely do this on your own. You have to just be very, very open. You have to be very curious. You have to be objective. And you have to really be willing to look at your childhood from a bigger picture, from an outside world, like with new eyes, so step out of yourself.
Yes.
Because like I said, what you think is normal may not be as normal as you think.
Yeah.
And again, I would say for me, what helped was listening to podcasts where other people talk about their traumas, or just things that have happened to them in their childhood that they lived with, that actually they realized had really had a massive effect on them as adults and their behaviours.
Yeah.
And it just gives you so much understanding of yourself. And with that, the ability to change.
Right.
Because you have to understand it doesn't matter what's happened to you. Doesn't matter whether you had awful, terrible traumas happen to you or little traumas happen to you. We can all work through them and move past them if we want to.
Yeah.
And I think if you've had really big traumas, it's really worth having some help with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I really do.
Yeah. And can I just ask you about phobias? Do you think they come from a trauma that we're not aware of usually?
Oh yeah, a lot. Yeah. We could talk about your with the mice, the little creepy, the rodents. The rodents. Yeah, the fast moving creatures. It was like you remembered. We worked through it.
Yeah.
And then you remembered why, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, my mum was scared of them, and she did really try her best to try and hide it from me.
But didn't you say there was something that happened with the mouse, and they caught a mouse? Do you remember? You said to me, it's so funny, you don't remember. You said you had caught a mouse or something, and it really upset you because it was traumatic because the mouse had...
Was it in the crisp packet?
Yes, it was something like that.
Did I tell you that?
Yes.
That little boy at school?
Yes.
Yeah, do you think that's where where we decided it had come from? That's right. Yes, he'd caught this tiny mouse, must have been a field mouse, because so tiny, in a crisp packet, and he was sort of like trying to chase the girls around with it, and I was trying to pretend I wasn't afraid, because obviously I knew then I'd get chased with it. But yes, you're right, it was the feelings I had for the tiny little mouse as well that I didn't like, that he was being used in that way. Yeah. So that was trauma.
Yes, absolutely.
That was trauma to me.
Yeah.
And then I continued that on. And also it didn't help that my mum was afraid of them as well.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about, how then something happens and then you keep getting it reinforced.
True.
So that will be another
then
reinforcement
every experience,
for you.
Yes. Was confirming that, impacting that trauma that I had. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a lot of phobias are linked with having some kind of trauma happen. Sometimes obviously again doing the past life stuff, I think some things come in.
Yeah.
Like with me, with my irrational fear of fire.
Yes.
I've had an irrational fear of fire for ever since. I was born.
Yeah,
truly, and it's so irrational, and obviously now I've worked out why that is. But I will, even as a child, I used to say I was burned at the stake as a witch in my past life. There was loads of reasons for that, and again, I think we could talk about that. That whole thing's a fun story, isn't it? But so I do think maybe you can come into this life with phobias, trauma. But that's still trauma, isn't it? It's still a trauma,
and they come through with you in the form of a phobia.
Yeah. Lots of people have that water phobia, don't they, where they don't like the bottom, not being able to see the bottom. That's really common,
and there's no reason for it. There's nothing you can relate it back to. So
I think but
again, you've come in with into this life from a past life.
Yeah,
interesting,
very interesting. But I just think it would be interesting now as the next kind of step for people to just to have a little curious look at their childhood. So have a look at your childhood, have a think about what, obviously there's going to be things that you might know are were traumatic for
obvious.
You. They're the obvious ones. What you want to have a look for is the ones that aren't so obvious, that you haven't been aware of. The subtle things. And listen to other people talk, and maybe talk about it to other people. Someone that you feel comfortable with, safe with. It's a safe space in our community group. So please do feel free to share, in the community group. If you have kind of had been doing this work and you've had realizations where you've actually been doing this and thought, oh gosh, yes, this was traumatic. I never realized it was traumatic, but now I know that this was traumatic, and you're happy to share it in the group. That would be wonderful as well, because other people might see that and then say, oh my gosh, that was my childhood as well.
Yeah. So helpful, isn't it?
And it just can really, like I said, it highlights so many areas for you to start working in, and gives you an understanding of where those limiting beliefs are, and why you would want to change them, and how you could change them, and what you can change them for.
Yeah.
So I think that's that.
Yeah.
It's quite a heavy one.
Yeah.
But I think necessary.
Definitely.
Necessary.
Absolutely, because it all comes back to those limiting beliefs again.
Yes.
And our programming all around.
It is the programming, and it's why you need to feel. You need to feel that trauma.
Yeah, because we just avoid it. Mm-hmm. Every time you have that memory, you think, oh God, no, I don't want to think about that.
So that's another little thing that you could do as well.
Yes.
Which is where the next time a memory pops up, and I bet you, because now you're going to be aware of it, I bet that you will have a memory pop up.
And it triggers you.
And it will trigger you. And it, I say childhood, but it might not be childhood. If you have any memory that comes up, your subconscious mind is always trying to help you.
Yeah.
So, and it's doing it for a reason. There is always a reason. Nothing's random with the subconscious mind.
No.
And it's so helpful for you. People just don't realize it's really, it's helping you all the time.
Yeah.
So pay attention. And if you have a memory pop up, take a minute to think through it. And if you can't do it right in that moment, write it down and come back to it when you have a moment to come back to it, and just close your eyes and just take yourself back there. Just be curious. I know I keep saying that, but you really do have to be curious. Take yourself back there, replay that memory, however you do it, whether you're visual or you're just feeling or you just know it. Just take yourself back there to experience it. And I guarantee you will gain insights from that memory, and it will probably be relevant to what is going on in your life right now. Because it's being triggered for a reason. There's something going on in your life that you're not happy with, and your subconscious mind is helping you out and showing you why this is related. But we just don't ignore. It's all there in plain sight for us, but we're just not paying attention. And we're just, like we said, we're pushing it down. We're pushing it down because we don't want to feel that. It doesn't feel nice. Doesn't feel relevant. Haven't got time for that. But just take a minute, sit down, pay attention, and let us know. If anything comes up and you feel comfortable, let us know. In fact, we'll do the same.
We will.
Let's pay attention and see what memories pop up.
That's
and we'll share them on the group as well.
Yes, that would be really useful. Yeah, we'll do that.
We've got a task. Yeah, exactly. Like to have something to do. Okay, thank you so much for listening to this episode.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting to hear, and it's all such good stuff for your development and to be your best you, if I can bring it back to that.
I think,
that's what it's all about.
Very nice, very nice. I know, because sometimes it's easy to want to do all the positive, lovely, light stuff, isn't it? But you got to do this kind of shadowy stuff.
Yeah, be brave. Don't be afraid of it. Yeah. Because it's happened.
Exactly. You've lived through it once.
You survived.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to really go back to it.
Yeah. And truly know that when you do feel the feelings, it doesn't take very long to let them pass. And the results of it are just epic.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, because your conscious mind automatically goes to shut that down. Don't think about that. Don't like that feeling. I feel like hot. If I'm thinking about it, it's like, oh no, don't want to feel like that. I'm uncomfortable. Gone. Since talking lately to you about this stuff, I sit with it, and it's actually not as bad as you think it's going to be.
It's not.
It's actually really interesting. So try and do it, and let us know.
Yes, please let us know. And as always, if you're enjoying the show, please, we'd be so grateful if you could share the episodes with your friends, tell them about us. If you haven't done already, you can rate us on Spotify and rate and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, I believe.
Yeah.
All of that helps us to get out there. We are definitely seeing we're getting out there now.
Yeah.
We're being listened to across the world already. But any help you could give us would be amazing, because we just want to reach as many people as possible. And I know we've mentioned the group quite a lot of the time through this episode, but you can find us on Facebook. Come and join us there. The link to that is in the show notes. And with that, I think we can say goodbye.
Yes.
Until next time.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.